Defending Assault Rifles to Our Friends. This is The Gun Rights War by Neal Knox, page 122, dated July 6th, 1990. My friend is a hunter, trap shooter, and handgun owner. His father gave him his first gun before he reached his teens, and he repeated the ritual by training and giving guns to his children. He's well educated. He's never seen a psychiatrist except at a cocktail party. He's never had a brush with the law, holds a responsible position in his company, belongs to the NRA, and gets letter writing mad when some politician or blow-dried anchorman blames him and his guns for the lawless acts of criminals or psychiatric misfits. But why, he asked, does anyone need an assault rifle? The short answer is we don't need one. We can get along without a gun with a stamped metal frame and a banana clip stuck out next year. We don't need a Winchester 30-30 with a magazine as long as the barrel either. The typical hunter and shooter truly doesn't need another shotgun, nor another rifle, nor another handgun, nor a car capable of 65 miles an hour, nor a boat, nor a personal airplane, nor a house with more than a couple of bedrooms and one bath, nor a steak once a week. Most of us went beyond need a long time ago, but we haven't got past want. In this affluent land, we reject the totalitarian doctrine that we should not be allowed to have something unless we can satisfy some bureaucrat that we need it. We are able to work for whatever we want, not what the government decides we may have. 2 children, a tiny apartment, enough rice or potatoes to avoid starvation, sturdy shoes to walk to work. That ability to work for, buy, and possess what we want is called personal freedom, and anyone or any government official who would restrict personal freedom must prove that the restriction is justified by the needs of society. Is a restriction on freedom justified just because we cannot prove we need whatever is proposed to be restricted? That isn't the way things work in the United States of America, except when gun control is the issue. Then the press and politicians seemingly need only declare that no one needs their artificially named target of the moment. A small, low-powered Saturday night special, a large, powerful, dirty, hairy Magnum, a sculpted bolt-action sniper rifle, expanding dum-dum bullets, non-expanding cop-killer bullets, semi-automatic assault rifles, or even worse, an assault weapon, which has been variously defined to include any magazine-fed pump or semi-automatic shotgun, or any capable of accepting a large-capacity magazine, or any magazine capable of holding more than 5, 10, or 15 shots. Instead of demanding that gun banners show the new restrictions will resolve a particular problem and do not infringe upon constitutionally guaranteed rights, too many of us think we have to justify needing that which we merely want, putting us in an impossible to defend position. Having suckered us into arguing on their terms, they declare assault rifles have no sporting use, and further narrow the boundaries of the argument by declaring that it isn't sport unless we're hunting big game or firing at regulation targets in organized, traditional, recreational games. It's ludicrous that we, who use guns for recreation, should allow someone who's never fired one to decide what's sport. I can't recall ever hunting big game with any of my several semi-auto rifles, but I've had a lot of fun chasing sprinting jackrabbits across far hillsides with a 30-shot M1 carbine, with minimal effect upon the rabbit population, and I remember having a ball shooting rocks out our chucker camp with a full-auto 22 rimfire, a gun that had no particular or practical reason for existence in my purposes except for such fun. But the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution has nothing to do with fun or sport. The right to keep and bear arms was written into the Constitution to allow you to defend your home, your family, your property, your nation. Even drug czar William Bennett, who pushed for the ban and imported semi-automatic military-looking guns admitted to the Senate Judiciary Committee last September that the handgun, not the assault rifle, is the overwhelming weapon of choice of criminals, including drug dealers. Yet less than 1% of handguns are misused. Consider that the drug czar has suspension of habeas corpus, allowing arrest and imprisonment without warrant, and massive violations of the constitutional protection against unreasonable searches and seizures. Consider that the outgoing commander of all U.S. military forces has called for prohibiting civilian possession of certain firearms and implied that the military should enforce that prohibition. Then recall Jefferson's words, "The strongest reason for the people to retain the right to keep and bear arms is at a last resort to protect themselves against tyranny in government." Strong medicine? Indeed it is, but the U.S. Constitution is not to be taken lightly. If the Founding Fathers intended only one class of guns to be protected by the Second Amendment, and there's no evidence that they made such a distinction, military-style rifles would be at the top of their list. The only Supreme Court Second Amendment decision in this century, U.S. versus Miller in 1939, did not address whether the right to keep and bear arms was indeed an individual right, but only considered the narrow issue of whether short-barreled shotguns was a normal militia equipment. No evidence was projected that smoothbore has always been used by the military because the Supreme Court heard only one side. Quoting the Supreme Court, Thomas Jefferson, or focusing on whether some proposed gun law would prevent some heinous act requires thought and effort, but it's infinitely more effective than lamely arguing that plinking at tin cans is too sport because it's fun, that a high-capacity magazine is too necessary so that we don't have to run out of ammo while completing a rapid-fire stage in a service rifle match, or that a rugged military rifle is too a hunting rifle because it's more reliable than a high-blue bolt gun in a fancy walnut stock. It's also true that if I'd been the owner of the St. Croix Hotel in the Virgin Islands, who the Washington Post showed guarding his property and guests with the rifle in the aftermath of Hurricane Hugo, I would have liked nothing better than a looter, robber, rapist, intimidating AK-47, except maybe a nasty-looking 12-gauge street sweeper shotgun with a revolving magazine. But in normal times, when there's no calamitous natural or man-made disaster to disrupt civilization, and when the government isn't trying to put me in jail because they don't like my attitude, do I really need a street sweeper or a military-style rifle? No, I could do without it. I could substitute some other kind of gun and do just as well, maybe even better. So could Patrick Booty or Joseph Weschbecker. Purdy sprayed over 100 shots in a couple of minutes. He hit 34, but because the AK-47 is designed to wound rather than kill, 29 of them survived. He could have killed and wounded at least as many and had fired as many shots had he used a MAC-10 or a more conventional appearing Taurus. Thankfully, he didn't. He used a Model 12 pump 12-gauge shotgun, which can fire 66 .33 caliber 00 buck balls in less than 3 seconds. With that awesome firepower, he could have sprayed far more devastation across that schoolyard and easily killed more teachers and students in the same or less time. But what was the hurry? Those kids weren't shooting back. That guy was more deliberate and deadly, killing 7 and wounding 13 in that Louisville printing plant with about 40 shots from his AK-47 and a conventional 9mm SIG pistol in a leisurely half an hour. In the same time, he could have gotten off just as many shots and killed more people with a single-shot shotgun. A berserk Frenchman killed 14 last July with a double-barreled shotgun. A berserk Nevadan killed a half a dozen people by deliberately driving his car down a Reno sidewalk. A berserk Canadian killed over 30 people just a few years ago by throwing a Molotov cocktail, a gasoline-filled bottle, into a dance hall. The first of the recent so-called assault weapon massacres was the murder of 21 at the McDonald's in California by a berserker named Handgun Control Inc., which at the time was crusading against non-expanding cop killer bullets, made much of the fact that he used expanding iron core 9mm ammo in an Uzi. In fact, that's why most of those shots with that gun were among the. In fact, that's why most of those who were shot with that gun were among the survivors. What Handgun Control Inc. and the press have ignored is that over half of the 21 he killed were murdered in the first minute or so using a conventional 12-pump shotgun, or a Model 12 shotgun, which fortunately jammed, causing him to substitute the less lethal Uzi. On the basis of the evidence, could that guy or that other guy or that other guy have been prevented from making their attack? Or would they have killed fewer if they would have bought military-style high-capacity guns? No. But aren't drug dealers and crack house guards arming themselves with assault rifles with which to mow down the police? No. According to police reports from the drug center cities, less than 10% of the guns seized by police are assault weapons, even under the broadest of definitions. Street cops do report that increasing numbers of nasty-looking military semi-auto rifles are being found in the crack houses, but that the guns are there to defend against or forestall attacks by drug users and competitors, not cops. Why should the crack house operator risk death by shooting it out with police when they know they'll be able to make bail and be back on the street within a few hours? Last year, nationwide, 14 police officers were killed with guns loosely defined as assault weapons. Do the circumstances of these police killings indicate that the officer wouldn't have been shot or would have survived the shooting if the military-style semi-autos had been banned? No. Is there any evidence that a ban would or could prevent drug dealers, cop killers, or any brand of criminal from obtaining the banned gun? No. A $200,000 Justice Department study by sociologist James Wright of the University of Massachusetts found no evidence that any form of gun law had reduced crime or reduced firearms crime. That study began under the Carter administration by a researcher with an admitted predisposition towards gun control, was followed by a $400,000 study to determine why the gun laws didn't work, to determine how convicted criminals obtained their guns. After interviewing 1,847 convicts in 10 state prisons, Wright concluded that the most serious of the handgun abusers, those convicted of using handguns in violent felonies, which would move up to sawed-off shotguns and other heavier, more serious firearms if the small handguns became inaccessible. Much of what is happening today, the increased use of more powerful semi-automatic rifles and shotguns by criminals, can be laid at the feet of groups like Handgun Control Inc. by focusing on the weapons used in crime instead of upon ways of preventing crimes. The anti-gun groups have created the very violence they allegedly set out to prevent. Has the predicted unintended consequence of their actions caused rethinking by Handgun Control Inc., National Coalition to Ban Handguns, and their fellow travelers? Not a chance. The criminal substitution of more powerful arms has merely given the handgun controllers a new target, long arms. And in the wake of the University of Montreal's murders, California something used the initial erroneous report that they were done with 22 rimfire to call for extending the state's ban to all 22 semi-automatic rifles. If Handgun Control Inc. and the National Coalition to Ban Handguns managed to get all the handgun laws they wanted, the sole effect upon crime or criminals, to the degree these handgun laws had any effect, would be even more of a substitution. But then, instead of the largely volunteer choice of more malevolent appearing assault rifles, criminals would substitute the more common and generally more lethal hunting guns owned and used by those asking, why defend assault rifles? Will to or even encouraging the banning of assault rifles cause the gun banners to attack your expensive Weatherby rifle or Browning superposed Shotgun? No. Will it merely advance the speed with those guns become the No, it will merely advance the speed with which these guns become the anti-gunner's target. The historical record is clear. Whenever the anti-gunners passed what they supposedly wanted, they invariably were proposing yet another gun law within just a few months. The Montreal murders with the Ruger Mini 14 purchased after obtaining a firearms acquisition certificate, which can be denied for having ever been charged with a violent misdemeanor, are being used to justification for further tightening of Canada's extremely restrictive gun laws. But the Canadian gun laws are the model for what the American anti-gunners tell us would prevent such crimes. Some gun owners say that they support the Second Amendment, but it isn't politically wise to defend artfully named and publicly condemned assault rifles. Admittedly, military-style guns are at the very edge of interest of most gun owners, beyond the interest of many. Should we attempt to defend these guns on the frontier, where the fight is more difficult and where we have fewer soldiers, or should we wait until our heartland is attacked, until the battle is fought over double-barreled shotguns and bolt-action rifles at the intersection of First and Main? If 25 years ago we had accepted Senator Dodd's ban on Saturday night specials, or if we accepted the various Saturday night special bans proposed throughout the 1970s and in the 1980s, we wouldn't have to fight last year's Maryland Saturday night special ban. If we had given up so-called Saturday night specials many years ago, as we were counseled by the very same people who now tell us we shouldn't waste resources fighting for assault rifles, what type of guns would we be defending today? Would we be fighting for the right to choose a military-style rifle, or pump auto and shotguns? Or would the fight already be over? Next section is called Defending Assault Rifles to the General Public. There's an editor's note by his son, Chris. The general public is woefully ignorant of firearms in general. Most of what they know about guns is gleaned from action movies, the general press, and, Lord help us, late-night comedians. This piece, written 4 years after, and to a large degree based on its counterpart, which immediately precedes it, appeared in the Cleveland Plain Dealer and other places to educate the unwashed masses who really don't understand firearms. So this one again is called Defending Assault Rifles to the General Public, and this one is dated July 6th, 1994. Why does anyone need an assault rifle? The short answer is we don't need one, or we don't need one of the military-style semi-autos, which are loosely and incorrectly called assault rifles. Neither does anyone truly need a car capable of more than 65 miles an hour, nor fine art, nor 2 televisions, nor symphonies, nor steak once a week, nor a house with more than a couple of bedrooms and 1 bath. Most Americans went beyond need a long time ago, but we haven't gotten past want. In this affluent land, we reject the totalitarian doctrine that people shouldn't be allowed to have something unless they can satisfy some bureaucrat that they need it. The ability to work for and buy and possess what we choose is the essence of personal freedom. Anyone who would want to restrict such freedom must prove that the restriction is both constitutional and necessary. But politicians arrogantly declare that no one needs their artfully named target of the moment, which they defer only cosmetically for more conventional appearing guns. Assault weapons have been variously defined to include any military-looking semi-auto which fires more than 1 shot with each pull of the trigger, not like already prohibited machine guns, through capable of accepting large magazines, so are most magazine-fed hunting guns. Contrary to myth, they are less deadly than common shotguns at distances up to half a city block and capable of spraying fewer bullets per second. Law-abiding citizens routinely use so-called assault rifles for hunting, collecting, competition in the Camp Perry national matches, that informal sport known as tin can plinking. More importantly, they also own and use them for defense of themselves, their property, and their families, and if need be, for defense of their liberties, as attested by civil rights workers in the South in the 1960s. Should such guns be prohibited because of mass murders that could be easily committed with conventional guns? Or should they be banned merely because some politician decides you don't need one? Rather, shouldn't their proponents prove that such proposals are constitutional and necessary to achieve an actual good? New Jersey banned so-called assault rifles this spring, supposedly because they were killing police and had become the weapon of choice of drug dealers. Nonsense. Not one murder of a policeman or anyone else was committed in New Jersey with any type of rifle. Nationally, according to the FBI Uniform Crime Reports, only about 3% of murders are committed with rifles. A police officer is several times more likely to be killed with his own revolver than with any assault weapon. Should we therefore prohibit police from carrying firearms? A recent Associated Press article stated that the dozen guns banned by the pending Senate crime package, 1970, the assault weapons most used in crime, no such evidence exists. Drug czar William Bennett admitted to the Senate that the handgun is the overwhelming weapon of choice of criminals, including drug dealers. Yet he instigated the ban on imported military-looking guns. Consider that Bennett also has suggested intrusive search powers for police and allowing imprisonment without warrant. Consider further that Admiral William Crowe, then chairman of the Joint Chiefs, last September told Associated Press that the nation's citizens also must face the fact that most of their cherished rights might need to be curbed in order to purge the drug menace from society, and that he implied that the military should be on the forefront of that effort. The Founding Fathers must be spinning in their graves. To prevent the Army from exercising police powers as the British Redcoats had done, our forefathers, led by George Mason, the Thomas Jefferson, refused to ratify the Constitution without a Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments, and to assure that the new government did not abuse those individual liberties, they included the Second Amendment, right of the people to keep and bear arms. According to the Supreme Court decision last winter, those are the same, the people, guaranteed the right to assemble by the First Amendment and protected from unreasonable searches by the Fourth Amendment. The Second Amendment doesn't apply only to a well-regulated militia, far from the Militia Act of 1792. Every able-bodied citizen is a member of either the organized or unorganized militia, so military-style arms were and are particularly protected. The Second Amendment has nothing to do with sport. Jefferson said the strongest reason for the people to retain the right to keep and bear arms is as a last resort to protect themselves against tyranny in government. The Second Amendment is freedom insurance, which is why Supreme Court Justice Story called it the Palladium, guardian of the liberties of a republic. That is why gun control advocate and constitutional law professor Sanford Livingston, in the embarrassing Second Amendment, Yale Law Journal, 1989, grudgingly admits the amendments on behalf of a strong Second Amendment, or the arguments on behalf of a strong Second Amendment, are stronger than many of us might wish. Those who are attempting to ban so-called assault weapons on trumped-up charges are tampering with the underpinning of all our liberties. No, we don't need military-style guns right now. But the beauty of the Second Amendment Freedom Insurance Plan is that so long as the people have them, we shall never need them. Thank you for supporting our projects. If you'd like to buy us a cup of coffee, check out our Patreon channel.
The guys and gals at gunwebsites.com encourage you to take a CCW class every year, practice at least once a month, and carry every day. Thank you for watching gunwebsites.com. Do 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 do.